Welcome to the Detroit Lions Morning Rounds podcast, also available on YouTube. I'm Jimmy Liao, MD, University of Michigan Medical School graduate, lifelong Lions fan. And we have a resounding, dominant Jaguars victory, or over the Jaguars, to talk about. First, shout-outs. Twitter retweets, Detroit Lions on the prowl, and Best of NFL retweeted a couple of my tweets. Appreciate that. Got some likes for some tweets from Sherman Hu, Josh C., and JK. So thanks for everybody who's retweeting or liking on Twitter. Overall, the Jaguars game, this is the dominant victory. Lions were in control the whole game, controlled both lines of scrimmage. It was great to see a clear-cut victory, even if the Jaguars aren't necessarily a great team. However, beating any team in the NFL by a significant margin, clear-cut, is an impressive thing. The Jaguars, keep in mind, have a win over the Colts this year, as well as a loss by 3 to the Titans. Those are two pretty good teams so far this year. So going into the game, the Lions were favored by 3 points. If they would have squeaked out a win over the Jaguars, that would have been fine. But seeing them have a dominant victory is what we really needed to see to have some optimism going forward. And we'll talk about more reasons for optimism for the rest of the season in a little bit. Now, when's the last time the Lions had a dominant victory? It's been a while for us Lions fans. Definitely not this year. We just barely beat the Cardinals. Last year, we did not have a single clear-cut victory. We only won 3 games last year. Cardinals, Eagles, and Chargers. And those were all very close games, coin flip games. Last time we had a dominant victory, the last game of 2018 versus the Packers. When we knocked out Aaron Rodgers early in the game, we won the game 31-0. It was a meaningless game, but that was a clear-cut dominant victory. We have not seen that in a long time. All right, let's talk about injuries. The most serious, significant, worrisome injury is Julian Okwara. It looked like he injured his right leg. It wasn't clear what happened. They did not show a good replay of it. Julian was on the right side, rushing from the right defensive end position. He was in a one-on-one position, got pushed behind the quarterback. Did not see any obvious injury. The video cut out after the ball was released by the quarterback, and they didn't show any replays. I watched it about 10 times trying to find anything. I didn't see much. He was sitting on the ground. It looked like he was reaching towards his right knee or right ankle area. The doctors didn't do any specific exams that I could see. I'm suspecting there's some kind of right leg injury. Not exactly sure, though. Today it was announced he was put on IR, which means he's out for 3 weeks. Not necessarily anything overly concerning, but it does show that probably a medium severity issue going on, possibly a knee sprain. Hopefully it's not something more serious like a meniscus tear. I doubt it's something very serious like an ACL or anything like that. We probably would have heard something regarding that. He did have to get helped off the field by a couple people. So that's always concerning when you can't put much weight on your leg right away. Now, Austin Bryant was brought back off PUP to replace Julian Okwara. Austin Bryant did not do much for us last year. We'll see what happens this year. So disappointing to see Julian out. We were certainly hoping he was going to be a big-time pass rusher for us this year, picked in the early 3rd round. We didn't add any defensive end pass rushers in the offseason, so we were putting a lot of stock in him, hoping he could produce for us. Other injuries during the game, Halapoulivaati Vaitai and Tyrell Crosby both missed large chunks of the game. They started the game but missed large chunks of the game. It wasn't clear what was going on. It was reported dehydration was an issue. Maybe it was hot there in Florida. Not exactly sure. But we saw Joe Dahl and even Matt Nelson, who I didn't even realize was on the team. They both came in and played a significant amount. Next guy who hurt himself was Danny Amendola. He hurt himself late in the game. Looked like he sprained his ankle. He was hobbling around on the sideline. Hopefully that's nothing too serious. We'll find out this week how much he's practicing, but I'm not concerned about anything too serious there. Now, we know that Desmond Trufant missed the game due to a re-aggravation of his hamstring. He didn't practice at all last week. I would expect him to be out again this week for the Falcons game. Typically, the Lions like to gradually work players back, have them be limited in practice the first week back, hold them out for that game, and then the next week getting 1 or 2 full practices and letting them play at that point. Justin Coleman, again, still out. Don't expect him back anytime soon. He had a pretty severe hamstring strain, as well as possibly additional issues in addition to the hamstring. All right, quick recap of the COVID issue. There was a positive test for a Jaguars practice squad player on the Friday morning PCR test. Fortunately, that did not impact the game. There were no other positive tests from the Jaguars, so the game went on as scheduled. Although I would not be upset if the Lions got a Monday night or Tuesday night game at some point in the season. They have no evening games this whole year, no national games except for Thanksgiving, so it'd be nice to see them get a national game, whether it's due to COVID or not. Other COVID recap issues, keep in mind that the Lions have had a few guys go down the COVID reserve list early in training camp. Stafford, Justin Coleman, Galladay, Hawkinson, Nada, and Oruwariye went on the COVID list. We know all of them tested positive for sure, except for possibly Nada and Oruwariye. Those weren't reported, but I suspect they probably tested positive as well. All those guys have a 90-day exemption, which expires soon, early November, based on my calculation. So they might start getting tested for COVID again, starting in November. All right, so let's talk about the defense, which showed a marked improvement this game. The run stopping was impressive, and this leads to my play of the game, which is actually the very first play of the game from scrimmage. The Jaguars had the ball, ran the ball on first down. The Lions stuffed them for no gain. This was an anomaly. We hadn't seen this before up to this year. Typically, teams are getting 5+ yards on almost every run. We hardly saw any run stops this year, especially early on in the game. So that set the tone. For me, that was almost a shocking moment. The Lions actually got a run stop and forced a second down and 10. Well, then on second down, the Lions stopped them again on a running play for -2 yards. Now, third down and 12, they got pressure on Minshew and forced a short pass and got a 3-and-out. A 3-and-out has been like finding a needle in the haystack this year for the Lions team. They have not been getting 3-and-outs and getting the offense in good field position. The offense has had to go 75+ yards on almost every drive this year. So it's been very difficult for the offense. The defense has not helped them out at all. Well, right off in the beginning of the game, a 3-and-out. The Jaguars partner shanks the punt. Lions offense gets it on the 50-yard line. So immediately a massive change from anything else we've seen this entire year. Let's talk about Jeff Okudah. A little bit shaky early. Gave up a 30-yard pass to sort of a double move, which was out and up. And he also got lucky that he didn't get a pass interference call in the end zone later in that the first half. So got a little bit lucky there, but the rest of the game did not see any major issues. My main concern with him, I don't have any major concerns, but my main thing I'd like to see him do going forward is to see some athleticism, see some catch-up speed, see some long speed. Haven't really seen that this year, so that's slightly concerning from an athletic standpoint. Maybe as his mental game improves, he can start playing faster. All right, the two things going into the game that I wanted to see from the defense was a good pass rush and stopping the short crossing routes. Well, the pass rush was significantly improved for the Jaguars game. We had already seen more creativity this year with more stand-up blitzers and more rushing of safeties and linebackers. Well, we saw a lot more of that this game. saw a ton of double A-gap looks, a lot of safety blitzes with Tracy Walker, who came in as a free rusher at least once, and a lot of blitzing from Jayron Kearse, who we haven't really seen much of this year. He's wears number 42. At first, I had no idea who this 42 guy was. This guy's huge. He's tall and he's big. He looked like a defensive end out there. That's what I thought he was, some kind of defensive end outside linebacker. But he's actually a safety position. He reminds me of Isaiah Simmons, who a lot of Lions fans wanted in the draft. Well, he had a big impact on the game. He played a lot of snaps in this game. So it was nice to see a bunch of safety blitzes, a bunch of linebacker blitzes again. Jelani Tavai was all over the place blitzing, and a lot of those blitzes worked. We got a good pressure percentage. The pressure percentage this week was 34%, which is excellent. Previously, coming into this game for the entire year, it was 16%. So we doubled our pressure rate because of a lot more blitzing, as well as guys winning with their one-on-one matchups, specifically Romeo Okwara, who's been playing well this year and has really picked it up the past 2 or 3 games. I pulled up the pass rushing win rates on the YouTube video, which you can see. He's pretty high up there. He's over 20% win rate, around 23% or so. He's ahead of guys like Everson Griffin, who some people wanted, Yannick Ngakoue, Cameron Jordan. So he's winning a lot of his one-on-one matchups. So it's great to see. He's doing better in that terms than Trey Flowers, who we would really like to see pick up his play as well, especially with Julian Okwara now being out for at least 3 weeks. Trey Flowers did have a strip sack, which was an excellent play, so he had a big-time impact play. Another guy who had a big impact play was Duron Harmon, who got another interception. He looks like a ball hawk out there in the backfield, sort of like a Glover Quinn used to be for us. He seems to have a nose for the ball, and he has good hands. He did drop an interception in the Cardinals game, but he did also get an interception in the Cardinals game. So he's looking like a great pickup. We gave up a 7th rounder for him. That looks like a great deal for us. Now, the crossing routes, I didn't see much of an impact in giving up those short crossing routes this game. The Lions did a good job stopping those. Maybe it's because we were playing more zone defense. We played 61% zone defense this game. Let's compare that to the previous 4 games, 18, 18, 44, and 37. So we doubled or tripled our zone defense percentage in this game, and it possibly made a big difference. Hard to say for sure, but the defense looked fantastic this game compared to the previous 4 weeks. Let's move on to the offense. The running game has been extremely consistent this entire year. I've been very impressed with the offensive line and the running backs. This might be the best running game we've had since 2013. That was the year that Reggie Bush had just over 1,000 yards and Joique Bell had 650 yards. This year, we're seeing holes opened up. We're seeing our running backs go consistently for 3 to 5 plus yards per carry. We're not seeing a lot of those minus yardage runs, getting stuffed for 0 yards or negative 2 yards. Lions fans have seen that over the past 3-4 years so much. Rushing it on first down, getting stuffed for negative 2 yards. Now we're on 2nd and long, 2nd and 12, and our drive is screwed. So we've been sick of seeing that for years. So Bob Quinn has done a good job building up the O-line, building up the running backs to the point where we're getting positive yardage plays, even on 1st and 10 situations when the other team knows we're trying to run the ball. And speaking of that, I would like to see us pass the ball a lot more on 1st and 10. I feel like we have trended in that direction the past game or two, more passes, more play action on 1st and 10. But I'd like to see us continue to increase that percentage up to like 75, 85%. Get it to the point where other teams are expecting us to pass instead of run on 1st and 10. That will open up our running game even more. So the star of the game, at least from the running standpoint, was clearly DeAndre Swift. He carried 14 times for 116 yards, showed a good burst. Adrian Peterson had 15 carries for only 40 yards. I've been asking to see Swift more this entire season. We drafted him in the high second round. A running back in the high second round should be an instant starter, instant impact player. The only running back who drafted ahead of him was Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's been doing very well for the Kansas City Chiefs. So finally, Swift got more opportunities this game. He needs to be our number one running back going forward. Peterson should be our third running back, in my opinion, a guy who comes in for some tough yardage in the second half or later in the game. One nice thing about our running backs is fumbles. No fumbles this year. I was worried about Adrian Peterson with his fumbling because he's a very hard running back who always tries to get that last yard or two. But he hasn't fumbled the ball this year, so that's been a great thing from all our running backs. From the passing game, we saw a lot more downfield shots this game with Stafford. It's nice to see that. I've been asking to see that. I've been wondering why we haven't seen that more this year. But we saw a lot more this game, which was nice to see. And a lot of that is because our offensive line has been so good this year. This may be the best offensive line I've seen in my lifetime as a Lions fan, going all the way back to the Barry Sanders days. The O-line is looking good in both run blocking and pass protection. So in the past, there have been many years where the offensive line has been good at pass protection, but they haven't been good at run blocking. So to see the O-line looking good in both is excellent and extremely good to see. Couple this with the fact that this was a ragtag unit throughout this entire game. There were guys coming in and out through the whole game. As mentioned earlier, Vaitai and Crosby left the game for large chunks of the game. So let's take a look at the snap counts for the O-line. Vaitai and Crosby only played 32% of snaps, even though they both started the game. The only guy that played 100% was Taylor Decker. Joe Dahl was 44%, Matt Nelson 60%. He played well because I didn't see him do anything bad the whole game. Jonah Jackson, for some reason, only played 77%. He had been playing excellent through this whole year, so not exactly sure why he didn't play 100% of the snaps. Now, we know last year the Lions liked to rotate their offensive guards. They hadn't been doing that this year, so it's unclear if they're getting back to that philosophy or if Jonah Jackson had some injury issues, or maybe it was a dehydration fatigue issue, which was maybe what affected Vaitai and Crosby. Maybe there was a lot of heat in the game. We didn't see that mentioned, but maybe there was a lot of heat and humidity in this game that caused them to rotate guys in and out to keep them fresh. Aboushi, who we haven't seen this year, played 60% of snaps. So the offensive line was an amalgam of various combinations throughout the whole game, and they still did very well the entire game. So that's great to see that we've got some depth. We got guys who can adjust to different combinations. Let's talk about Matthew Stafford, who has not had a very good year. Not a horrible year, but not a good year. He did throw some nice balls this game. I feel like this game was pretty consistent with how he's played this whole year. Not significantly better. Definitely not worse. He did throw some nice balls, drop some balls in the bucket. His best one was a deep pass down the middle in the first half to Kenny Golladay. Golladay was well covered on the play, and Stafford put it right on him. He had another deep pass in the first half to Marvin Hall, which was thrown well behind him, possibly due to a wind issue. The wind affected the quarterbacks, it seemed, as well as Prater, who missed a kick to the left. So Stafford still has to get better at dropping balls into buckets and putting in a position where his receivers can make a play instead of overthrowing guys all the time. He did have an interception later in the game, which I feel like is on him. It was a tip pass, but he wasn't under any pressure. And he just needed to put some more loft on the ball and get it over the line of scrimmage. 2 guys jumped up to knock down the pass. That one's on Stafford. Yeah, most of the time that ball is going to get knocked down and just be an incomplete pass. This time it was an interception, so somewhat unlucky in that standpoint, but that's on Stafford to get some loft on the ball and throw it over the line of scrimmage. All right, let's talk a little bit more about snap counts, specifically the linebackers, which I found was interesting. Jamie Collins was at 92%. He's been our best linebacker this year. Reggie Ragland, 58% of snaps. This is a guy we were not expecting to play much coming into this year, but he's playing more than Jelani Tavai, who only played 38% of snaps. Christian Jones, 34%. Jared Davis, 17%. So we're seeing a lot of rotation with the linebackers and a lot of Reggie Ragland this year, which is pretty interesting. Tavai did get a lot of run in the first half, a lot of blitzing, a lot of activity, so maybe there is a fatigue issue in the second half. Hard to say what's going on there. All right, so overall, great victory, resounding victory over the Jaguars. Nice to see finally a clear-cut win. Going into the Falcons game, hopefully we can continue this going forward. Thanks for listening. You can find me on my YouTube channel. Feel free to leave comments or on Twitter at JimmyLiaoMD. Appreciate any comments, feedback, disagreements, discussion. Subscribe or rate. Thanks.